Liftoff will start in T-minus 10 seconds.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Evan and John, and you're listening to the Boomer and X Show.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us on episode 51.
Exciting news!
The Boomer
for
and X
episode
Show.
51. John?
We have news. What we're going to do, we're going to take just a few minutes to update our friends and fans as to what's going on with the Boomer and X Show.
So we have YouTube up and running. So we got YouTube and for a couple of weeks, I guess now, and what was happening is only new content was going on to YouTube, and
The previous 3 episodes
they've been
gone
there,
on.
and we've got good amount of listens or views, and so now I've been back and forth with our hosting, the people who host our podcast,
right,
and YouTube, and man, weeks, and I finally got it today. I get the email, bam, YouTube is ready. I go double check, of course. All of them are there, 50 episodes. And so we got YouTube up and running. And so I go into work early today because I had drum practice tonight. So I never drive in 5 o'clock traffic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck in 5 o'clock traffic, and it's standstill. Get an email alert, and I was like, man, whatever. I'm sitting here standstill. I'm going to check it. So I'm checking my email. And it says, congratulations, the Boomer and X Show has been accepted by iHeartRadio. So in one day, we went from just being on iTunes to now being on iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio. All of our old content is there, and from now on, all of our new content will be there. So what's great about that is we have, if you're not an Apple iPhone user, you either have to go listen on the website,
mm-hmm,
or you have to listen, and who's going to pull up the website and listen? I mean, I wouldn't do it.
right.
I definitely wouldn't
Right.
do it. I would listen on my iPhone through iTunes. If you can't do iTunes, well, I guess you're not listening to the episode. So now everyone can get it on YouTube. And I think iHeartRadio is getting more popular maybe than iTunes, because I've heard more about iHeart than iTunes.
I know over the past year or two, I have heard a lot of advertisements and a lot of buzz about iHeartRadio.
I think what's cool about iHeartRadio is you can also obviously get radio on it, and you can't do that on Yahoo.
Right.
I mean, not Yahoo, on iTunes.
On iTunes, yeah.
So that's a big plus. And then I don't know if iHeartRadio has always done this, but they have podcasts too, so we're on there. And Android users can get on there. So, I mean, so tell your friends, tell everybody. I know that's going to open up a lot of new listeners, hopefully. And I haven't messed with iHeart much because I like iTunes, and I listen to live radio. I don't listen, I don't ever stream radio. But I'm going to have to get on there and tinker around a little bit. If we got a podcast on the site, might as well figure out how it works. But go check it out. Something we wanted to talk about kind of just as a small talk was how everything it takes to make this happen, like as far as technically, and even the mic, like what mic do we use and stuff like that.
Yeah, we started off, and I know I had a very little bit of radio and television exposure by virtue of having done internships at a couple of local TV stations, and I did work at the Weather Channel for 7 years, but I didn't have anything to do with the television part of it other than briefing on-air talent.
What they were saying, yeah.
Right. I gave them the weather information. I did do some practice at the Weather Channel radio where I recorded some segments, but we're talking about, other than that, no radio experience.
And none here.
And none for you. So back in, I'm going to say probably October of 2014, and
sounds about right.
We touched on this on our introductory episode when we were sort of coming out and saying, here's who we are, here's what we're doing, here's how we got started. So we're not going to do that whole thing again, but just a real quick recap for those of you that haven't heard that episode.
Yeah, go watch it or go listen to it.
Evan came to me one evening. We were sitting at work in the break room. He said, "Hey, let's do a podcast." And
No. Here's how it went. I said, "Hey, I had a dream."
That's right.
And you said, "Was I on top?" I didn't even say about me and you. I just said I had a dream. So, anyways, continue.
So so you said, "Let's." You had a dream that we were
in the break room at work. And we were talking, and then we just kind of look around, and everyone's listening.
Everyone's listening, and it was like, and this kind of before your time, but these old E.F. Hutton commercials, where when it's E.F. Hutton was a brokerage firm or a financial analyst or something like that. I don't even know if they're around anymore.
I've never heard of them.
But you would have these two people in a crowded room talking, and one of them would whisper to the other, "Well, my broker is E.F. Hutton," is E.F. Hutton. And E.F. Hutton said, and in the commercial, everybody stops what they're doing and leans in so they can hear. So when you told me about that dream, that commercial was what came to my mind.
Well, anyways, we started, let's make a podcast. Started throwing around names. I think Two Guys Talking was like,
Two Guys Talking.
Contender. We didn't have like a specific category that we're going to follow. It's not just sports. It's not just news. We're trying to hit everything. So yeah, then you finally came up with epiphany in the shower. Like all good thoughts
came to me in the shower. I thought, well, the Boomer and X show, with the point being, for those of you that don't know, there's a 28 years age difference between myself and my friend Evan. And so I'm a baby boomer. He's really more of a millennial than a Generation Xer, but Boomer and millennial didn't make any sense for the name of a show.
89, it depends on the site you look at, but I saw 89 as kind of a crossover in the X generation, barely. So we can claim it.
Yeah, it's close enough.
And it just has a good ring.
It has a good ring to it. At least we think it does. And
I couldn't believe Boomer and X wasn't anywhere taken.
I remember when you said, well, surely that's going to be taken, but it wasn't.
No,
it wasn't.
So, okay, I don't know. After we kind of talked, I was like, all right, how do you do a podcast? Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of info out on it. Well, podcast for podcasting, but I ain't about to sit down and listen to some dude's life work on a podcast on how to make a podcast, because by the time I finish listening to that thing and now know how to podcast, I could have tried and failed 5, 6, 7 times and come up with how to do it, which is pretty much what we did. We started talking into my phone on your dining room table, with all kind of background noise and all kind of weird reverb.
Yeah, the air conditioner would kick in, and which you can control that by turning the thermostat higher to where the AC won't come on. But the refrigerator would come on, and you would hear it in the mic.
Yeah,
and
loud.
So, how many episodes did we do before we set up
on the phone?
Yeah.
Well, we did a couple of practice ones that we never aired.
Right.
And I think maybe one. What, just the intro? So the first 3, because the second one's kind of like an intro for the third one, and right.
And then I thought we did a few more than that, but it was single digits.
All I know is it was after Christmas. We got all this gear. We got the mixer. We got the mics. We got the boom mics.
And so there were several shopping trips to.
Oh yeah.
To
so we went to music stores and talked to people who knew nothing, and then people who knew everything, and oh, you got to get this kind of cable. That's why you're not getting. There was one time we couldn't hear anything out of our left side, and it wasn't recording anything on the left side. So very annoying, and we tried and failed all kind of places. But we're up and running, and that's just the hardware.
Well, and I'll tell you, there were certain frustrating aspects of it, but you're certainly far more technically savvy than I am. And given the fact that we were starting this with no background whatsoever, and a little bit of research and a little bit of trial and error with going to places like Radio Shack and some other
they're
places,
still in business, by the way.
and buying some equipment, some of it worked, some of it we had to take back. Really looking back on it, came together more smoothly than I thought it was going to. It really did. I mean, yeah, there were bumps, but again, we were in.
See, for me, it
totally
didn't feel that way because I'm watching and listening to people who are on professional equipment, and they're not saying how they set it up,
right?
But it's there and it sounds good, and I know I can go buy that same stuff and set it up, but I can't figure out how to. So
it didn't take long.
No, it didn't.
It didn't take long, and when I say it didn't take long, I'm giving you the credit.
Yeah,
because
I maybe had one sleepless night trying to figure it out, but other than that, it's set up, and now all I come in and just click and play and go. It's easy. Now as far as like dealing with iTunes and stuff, they had like all kind of things you have to first get a hosting site that will create an RSS feed, then you send that to them, and they actually have they have like, well, you got to be at least 4 episodes with this many views before we even consider you or something. And so we met all those prerequisites.
Mm-hmm.
We met all those prerequisites, and then I think they actually listened to a couple of episodes to make sure you are, like, say if you were, say I'm a sports episode, but you're doing comedy. I don't know if they'll just force you to change your category or what.
I mean, it's not automatic acceptance.
No,
you have to submit to iTunes,
and I think it's continual. Like they'll. All right, yeah, you're still complying to our contract and stuff. And
you do have to have a little something going.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a little something going.
As long as it took iHeartRadio to do it, I think they kind of put us through the same process. Now, what was easy is I just used our RSS feed URL and gave it to them, and I'd already kind of I had to tweak the picture for iTunes to a certain pixel count,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't have to do that for iHeart. I'm assuming because I'd already done it for iTunes. I'm assuming they're close to the same specs. But YouTube, other than not accepting an episode over 15 minutes, which they're all over 15 minutes, was pretty easy to figure out once I was able to upload
mm-hmm.
all the rest of them. So, yeah, we've come, what I consider a long way.
I do too. And we have... This episode is number 51, the one that we're recording now,
mm-hmm.
and we'll get into the meat of it in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so this episode is John Jr., our sports analyst. He's going to come on, and we already hit NCAA 2 weeks ago or last week.
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to do NFL. And we're leaning to do like NFL with fantasy. But the more we did the episode, we've already recorded it, so we're going to slap that in after this.
Yeah.
And the more we recorded it, we realized, well, we talked about all the players we're about to talk about in fantasy. So as you listen to the episode, you can realize because you've already picked your players at this point, but now you can go from there. You can go from there and see what defenses you want to get.
But before we hit the NFL roundup, we did want to cover something real quickly that's going on with regards to the NFL, and an NFL player right now is making a lot of news, and I felt like it warranted a few minutes of discussion here on the Boomer and X Show, and that's the Colin Kaepernick demonstration that he's
what was it you were going to say?
Making of not standing during the national anthem, and of course there have been a lot of opinions thrown out there, and I have intentionally stayed away from them because I didn't want to read or hear anybody else's and sway my thoughts. Now, of course, there are those that have come out and with the if you don't like this country, leave it, which is ridiculous. It's just a silly, childish, and immature way to go about something like this. But I did have some thoughts on it, and I wanted to talk about it before we get into, again, more of the fun stuff of actually talking about the expected season coming up in the NFL. Evan, what about you? How closely have you followed the Kaepernick situation? What are your thoughts on it?
When I saw it, it was I get highlights. I wasn't watching the game, but I get the highlight. Colin Kaepernick didn't stand up and salute the flag. And, thinking about it, remember Zika virus and the dirty water? This is talking about the Rio games
mm-hmm.
and everything. How big a deal all of that was
mm-hmm.
until the first medal was won. I think this is going to be news until the first kickoff is kicked. I think this is just, we're looking for something to talk about. It wouldn't be this big if it happened week 1 or 2, I don't think. So anyway, saying that, I think it was offensive to our country symbol, but I think that's what he was going for. So he got that. I personally believe that it was don't disgrace the flag. That's just something. I guess if you, it was disgraceful. That's kind of where I'm leaving it.
Well, specifically,
Right.
it was standing for the national anthem.
Yeah.
That was the form that his protest took. I'm gonna come in with a little bit of a different point of view. You disagree with him on an ideological standpoint. You feel like that you should stand for the national anthem regardless of your views about what's going on. I'm assuming so because you
Yeah.
just said
Yeah.
don't disgrace the flag. I'm going to say that I think that some of the biggest people out there in terms of being vocal about the fact that, in their opinion, he has disrespected the flag or disrespected the country, I'm going to say that nationalism and patriotism are a whole lot like religion, that the loudest voices are usually, really, the worst offenders. And
Like the least patriotic, or
absolutely, because let's just take, for instance, a presidential candidate. I believe that the presidential candidate that said that Colin Kaepernick needs to leave this country, I believe that his entire...
this got all the way to presidential candidates?
I believe that his entire run has been unpatriotic. Because as I watch it, I think it is ludicrous to think... It almost borderline seems like he's not serious when I hear a lot of what he says. And I think one of the most unpatriotic things you can do is run for president in a manner that makes it seem like, are you really serious about this job? So I'm not even going to give the Colin Kaepernick was unpatriotic argument. I'm not even going to give it any kind of credence by addressing it. However, I do want to give this criticism of what Colin Kaepernick has done. He wanted to call attention to something, and this is police brutality, in his words, a criminal justice system that is not equal to people of color, I believe, in his words, and I'm not going to take issue with that. I think there are problems there. But not standing for the national anthem on the field of play when you're wearing a uniform that represents an organization, represents a city, and represents a league. I believe that that is not the place to speak as an individual. I believe that is the place to be one of those others that are wearing that uniform. And I believe when you take that stand while you're wearing that uniform, you are assuming that everybody that's wearing that uniform has to in some way be there with you. And I kind of doubt he got everybody's approval of the organization and the players before he did this. I appreciate the fact that he feels strongly enough about this to do it. But I think a thing to do as an NFL player, and let's be honest, all NFL players have a lot of credibility with them. They carry that credibility with them as they go through life. He could have started a foundation. He could have started an organization in the city he plays in, the city of San Francisco, where he tries to bring about urban neighborhoods and police officers. He could have worked visibly and vocally to address this issue. While I think that there is some courage needed to do what he has done, I feel like from a standpoint of practicality and pragmatism, his approach will not bring any converts to his point of view. Those that already feel like there was a problem will side with him, and those that feel like the problem wasn't there will dig their heels in and be against him. I don't see that he changes anything. And I think if you go to protest something, shouldn't your ultimate goal be to bring about change and not just awareness?
Yeah.
That's how I see this. So I take issue with him not on an ideological basis, but on a pragmatic basis. I think there were other things he could have done that may have been a little more thought out, may have required a little more effort, and been a little less divisive, and may have worked over time to bring about some people that don't see his point of view on this to see his point of view on this. Because what he's doing is not going to do that. And that's what a protest should do. It should bring about change.
The main thing I was wondering is, does this play out on the field? Do you think that will happen? Do you think a teammate might let a other guy get a shot in on him, or someone's going to hit him harder because... Now, here, I'm going to answer before you answer.
Okay.
I think the media usually, like, all right, so when you're like, Peyton Manning versus Eli Manning, it's crazy, it's going to be awesome, last time these two met, blah, blah, stats. Those two aren't doing that back and forth craziness. The media is doing that. I think they kind of want to talk about that and see if that would happen. And I don't think he's worried about that. I don't think players going to let that happen, but do you think that might?
I do think that any time you bring it to the field of play, you open yourself up for unintended consequences. And more often than not, those could be bad.
And what I was thinking, you might have some guy out there that he served in the military, or his brother's in the military, he took it personally, and he's going to take it out on you when he, is about to tackle you.
Yeah, well, I don't know that military or non-military, because I've actually read some stories where he was getting a lot of support from military people. Of course, this is aimed more at police officers. Again, for reasons I've already stated, I believe that when you take the field, you're wearing a uniform, you take the field as a football player. I believe you put your humanity off to the side for that 3.5 hours. And again, that's not to say that NFL players shouldn't speak about social issues and take action. I think they should, because they do carry more than their share of the weight, and they are high profile. And I think that if they go about it the right way, they can affect positive change. I don't think this is the way to do it.
So I was reading the MLB has a rule where all players have to stand. Do you think the NFL will go in this way? Or is it too late to do that? Is that a rule you need to put in place before you've got a protest going on for that reason? Or will it seem more oppressive if you have a black man standing up for something, using his First Amendment rights, and then you say, well, no, you have to stand?
The NFL Players Union is strong, and I believe a lot of the answer to your question comes from the fact that the NFLPA is very strong. And so I don't think that any action with regards to players will have to stand or have to do certain things. I don't think any rules are going to change in the NFL because of that.
Do they need to?
I wouldn't want to see this become a regular thing, and I don't think it's going to.
I don't either.
And so,
although he did say he himself would continue, but
he did, and I think that's another mistake he made. I think if he wanted to do it one time to make a statement, that was one thing, but now he's painted himself into a corner of where this is now an ongoing distraction.
When you're on ESPN, you don't want it to be, as a professional athlete, you don't want it to be for things like this. You want it to be for success on the field,
right?
And
which was already, by the way, not going
he's
well.
Looking at second team,
So he's going from being a quarterback that played in the Super Bowl, 3 seasons ago, to now being a second string on a bad team.
Here's what they're doing. They're RG3 in him. They're making him sit. They don't want to get rid of him because then they got to pay him his money.
Right.
They're RG3 in him. They're letting him sit on the bench. And before this.
Before this, he was already having issues.
That was going to happen.
Right.
He was sitting on the bench before this happened. And now, why put a target on another target?
And again, I think when you bring it to the field of play, you open yourself up for unintended consequences.
So,
and where's the gain? Where's the gain for his point of view? I don't see it.
Is he? I haven't heard of any lost sponsorships or anything like that.
I don't know that he. Did he have any? I don't know that he had any. I don't know.
Like you said, he played in the dang Super Bowl. He's got to have
maybe
sponsor.
Maybe, but he had already been falling off a pretty.
That's true.
Going down a pretty steep hill even before this. So sympathetic somewhat to his point of view, not in agreement with the way he went about it, just because I don't think it's productive to what he says he's trying to accomplish.
In my mind, he disgraced the flag, and that's just something you don't do as an American. I don't like that. I love your points, agreeing ideologically, and but not practically.
Mm-hmm. And I intentionally stayed away. I didn't want to read or listen to anyone because I feel like if I had read and listened to a lot, I probably would have seen someone that
you would
said
have gotten mad and not wanted to talk about it at all.
No, not at all. I didn't want to have someone influence what I knew I wanted to say.
Yeah.
That was it. No, it had nothing to do with being angry. I just didn't want to parrot what someone else said.
Yeah.
So if anyone else said what I said, they said it without my knowing it.
Well, I'm sure someone else said that he disgraced the flag. So
that I know. That I know that.
I was about to get into all the stuff I've heard, but you've all heard it.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been going on for a week now. It's time to get into some real football talk, not drama. Real football talk. John and John Jr. John Jr. impresses me every time he comes on with the amount of knowledge. We actually had a listener emailed and said, "Hey, ask John Jr. who Sean Payton's sister's cousin is, and if they can walk my dog." Like he would know, who that person is. So yeah, we're gonna get right into that. I'm going to step back from the mic and just kind of produce and make sure it all sounds good. Let them two get at it, and then I'll come back in the outro and say bye to y'all.
So hang on through this break, and when we get back, some hardcore NFL preview conversation.
What is up, guys? I am John from Bushy Gaming, and you are listening to the Boomer and X Show. I want to encourage all you guys to head over to my gaming channel on YouTube. It's Bushy Gaming for all the latest Call of Duty news as well as some epic gameplays. Also, in the very near future, I will be uploading content of other games as well, so you guys be on the lookout for that. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at ZBushy. That's capital Z, capital B-U-S-H-I-E. You guys can also find me as John Busher on Facebook. I appreciate all the support, guys, and don't forget while you're at my channel to hit the like button as well as give me a subscription. Peace out.
All right, and joining us now is our football analyst, John Springer Jr. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Sure. Glad y'all had me.
John, a couple of weeks ago, we had you on for our college preview. We've gotten a good response to that, so we're looking forward to this. So let's jump right in if we can. What we'll do is we will start with the New Orleans Saints and the NFC South. Specifically, how do you see the Saints this year? It looks like in preseason they've had some issues with their offensive line, and this looks like it may be a holdover of issues from last season. What do you see with regards to the Saints this year?
As far as the Saints and the offensive line, I mean, to be completely honest, as a Saints fan, I was very optimistic before the season started. But watching the first couple of preseason games, the offensive line just has not looked good. And I don't see how you can fix that once the preseason has started. So I think the offensive line is going to be a recurring thing for the Saints all year.
Did they not make any off-season moves to address the issues, or they made the moves and they were the wrong ones?
They did not. They did not make any moves. They did not. Oh, well, they could have made a move for a backup or something like that, but they did not address it how it needed to be addressed in free agency or the draft.
Was there anybody out there floating around, particularly with regards to free agent or somebody in the draft, that you were hoping that they would acquire or take?
No one specifically, because, when you look at O-linemen, it's not a position where people just watch and they're looking for this specific guy or that specific guy, but it was obvious that the offensive line needed attention in the offseason, and they just didn't do it.
You're definitely right about that. It was apparent last year that they had issues there. Where do you put the blame on something like this, with the Saints in particular, with organizations? Do you think it's an owner issue, a general manager issue, a coach issue? With the Saints specifically, who do you think chose not to address this or didn't realize it was a problem?
Just like any other business, it's the boss's fault. Everything is the boss's fault.
But which one of these is the boss we're talking about? Peyton or the GM or
Sean Payton?
Payton?
Yeah, because I mean he may delegate the responsibility to the general manager, but at the end of the day, what the general manager does is the fault of the head coach, whether he does it right or wrong. If the general manager makes great moves, then the head coach is going to get praise. If he does not address things that need to be addressed, then the head coach is going to get the blame, and he should.
What about offensive weapons? The offensive line aside, what about weapons added or lost since last year with regards to running backs, receivers, tight ends, so on and so forth?
I think as far as offensive weapons, I think they did a really good job, which shows that they can make the right personnel moves depending on where they think it's important to make moves at. They drafted a really good receiver out of Ohio State. They brought in a tight end from the Colts.
And who's the Ohio State wide receiver?
Michael Thomas.
It's a big target, right?
Big target. Very, very, very similar to Colston. I think he's the all-time leader in receiving yards for the Saints. Very similar, big body, great hands, great ability to, even though he's not open, able to go up and kind of out-muscle the defender for the ball or out-jump the defender for the ball. So Michael Thomas is probably the biggest addition in the offseason.
Now he's going to play a wideout?
Yes. He'll be, I don't know. They'll move him around. I don't know if he'll be X or Z or the flanker spot, but he'll be moved around, but he'll play the same role as Colston played.
And how do you feel like the Saints' running game is going to go with the O-line troubles that it looks like they're going to have?
I don't think it's going to be good. I would like to say it's going to be better, but the only way I see it being effective is if Breeze kind of wears down the defense with a short passing game and they get a little worn out, and then they can kind of try to establish the run. So it will be kind of backwards as far as, in football, the golden rule is, establish a run, then throw. I think the Saints will have to go backwards this year. I think they'll have to establish the throw, then run.
Well, they could very well look similar to the Steelers of last year with that. The Steelers get a lot of yardage by really treating the very short passing game as something of a running game, or vice versa. You have a lot of targets going to D'Angelo Williams and Le'Veon Bell. You have a lot of short passes. So your running backs are really a part of your passing game in a very big way. And,
right.
And it sounds like you're saying the Saints may very well be the same way, that there may not really be, while running backs may get a good bit of touches, rushing yards from scrimmage probably will be pretty hard to come by.
Right. I think that the running backs will get touches in the passing game. I think that will be a big part of the offense. And then I think later in games, as the defense has started to get worn down, then the Saints will be able to run the ball.
Speaking of the Saints defense, how do you see the acquisition of Paul Kruger fitting into their scheme?
Well, the thing about Paul Kruger is he knows how to get after the quarterback. And I really like him being picked up. The Saints drafted a second-round pick last year as a pass rusher. He had shown a lot of promise, a ton of promise, and he tore his ACL in the preseason, and they brought Paul Kruger in to fill that void. So I think that if they can stop the run on first and second, then Paul Kruger will be able to come in and make plays in the passing game, rushing the passer, hurrying the passer, sacking the passer. I think it was a move that needed to be made, and I think it was a really good move.
And that actually, that Paul Kruger question was a listener-submitted question. That listener also wants to know, how do you feel about the Saints over or under 8 wins?
Unless there are more injuries, I'd say over, but just a little over. I don't see them being able to win 12 or 13. I think the offensive line is too weak. I think that the defense would be really good while playing with a big lead, but I don't think they're going to be good if it's a close contest where the opposing offense can run or pass.
John, continuing on with the NFC South, and we won't spend quite as much time on the other teams as we did on the Saints, but we had the Panthers last year who won the division and went on to win the Super Bowl and lose to Denver. We've got the Falcons, which I think by all measures had a disappointing year last year. And we've got Tampa Bay, who have a new coach this year, having replaced Lovie Smith. They've got their big-name second-year quarterback, Jameis Winston. How do you see these other teams doing this year? Just a real quick synopsis on each, and then give me your order of finish in the NFC South.
Okay, first off, I'll start with Carolina. I think Carolina wins the division again. I think they are the most balanced team in the division. Carolina, they lost a great cornerback in Josh Norman, but they drafted 2 or 3 guys to help that secondary. But the strength of the Carolina team has always been their defensive line, and that will continue to be strong, which will make the job of the linebackers and the secondary much, much easier. So I have Carolina winning the division. Atlanta, they made a couple picks that will help to make their defense better. They've got a great offense. They've got Julio Jones, but I still think they are a year or 2 away, and I think that Carolina's still just too good. As far as Tampa, they have Winston, and, he played well at times, and he didn't play well at times. And the defense played well at times, but they didn't play well at times. So I still think they're a year or 2 away. Bottom line, though, Carolina wins the division again on the strength of a great defense.
Do you think that Cam Newton has a year comparable to the really, really, by all definitions, breakout year he had last year?
I think it'll be similar. They lost Benjamin in the preseason last year, who was the number 1 receiver target. Now, keep in mind, Carolina is not New England. They don't have 4 or 5 guys that are going to catch 50-plus balls. They are a run-centered offense in that there's 1 or 2 guys on the field that catch passes. And they lost their best pass catcher in the preseason. Well, he's coming back. I think that they win with defense and power running game and passing to 1 or 2 guys.
The Buccaneers, but somewhat to my surprise, last year got rid of Lovie Smith. They've got a new coach. What effect, if any? How do you see that playing out?
I tell you what, I hated that they got rid of Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith is a really, really good coach, and I'm sure he had all the pressure on him in the world to take Jameis Winston and then to start Jameis Winston. But that's not going to go well, starting a rookie quarterback. So you're going to lose games. So then he loses games, and then they want to get rid of him. I'm not sure that that was the right thing to do, given that he had a rookie starting quarterback. That's what the ownership decided to do. So I don't think it was the right thing to do. I would have given him another year or 2 while he was starting a rookie quarterback. I
agree. I was surprised to see it, and I'm not really a Tampa Bay fan, but I like Lovie Smith. I was a little disappointed in that outcome. Just for the sake of comparison, I'm going to go Panthers, Bucks, Saints, and Falcons in the NFC South. That's my expected order of finish. Jumping to the NFC East now, John, we've got the Cowboys, who always seem to have the drama of several teams. And here we are now with Romo hurt to start the season. He's out 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. Dak Prescott, rookie quarterback, has looked good in the preseason. How do you feel like overall the Cowboys are going to look this year?
Okay, well, first we'll start off with until Romo comes back. Dak has looked very, very good in the preseason. Very good. But he's not looking at real blitzes that he's going to see in the regular season. However, the Cowboys will be able to, with Dak at quarterback, run an offense that has elements of a Tim Tebow offense at Florida. Elements of a Tim Tebow offense that was used at Denver. And what I mean by that is they will have designed quarterback runs. On 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, he will be a real running threat. And when a lot of people don't understand that when the quarterback runs the ball, it gives the offense an extra blocker. In most offenses, the quarterback hands the ball off, and then he just fades away. So now you're 10 on 11 for offense versus defense. But when the quarterback keeps the ball, you're now 11 on 11. It gives the offense an extra blocker. Now, Dak will not be able to throw the ball around like Romo has. He will not be able to. But what he can do is hand the ball off to really great running backs behind that great offensive line. And then what he can do is 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, there can be designed runs while the defense is still having to respect those great receivers on the team, Witten, Dez Bryant. So that will open up Dak's ability to run. And what it'll do is it'll keep the Cowboys on the field. They will continue to make first downs, and they will keep the offense on the field, which is what they're going to have to do.
Well, and you've pretty much answered it, but we did have a listener submitted question as do you think that Jason Garrett will let Dak Prescott loose to throw deep, or will they be more conservative and just ask him to manage the game? And it seems like you're thinking it'll be mostly manage the game, but they do have some deep weapons, and you may see a little bit of that, but you don't expect them to throw it all over the place.
I don't think they will a ton, but they will throw it deep because what they will do is they will bait defenses in with their running game, whether it be with Alfred Morris, whether it will be with the freshman running back from Ohio State, whether it will be from Dak. Their plan will be to bait defenses in with a run and then throw it over top to their receivers to create a balance between the run and the pass. So I don't think they will throw it as much as if Romo was there, but I do think they will still throw it deep to keep defenses honest and to keep safeties out of the box.
And, of course, Prescott did have a very good career at Mississippi State, and he did have a lot of passing yards, but he created a lot of plays with his legs too. So I think what you're expecting is that they will use his talents and his abilities. They'll just be using them much sooner than they thought they were going to. Right.
I don't think they have any choice. I don't think that – here's the thing. Dak's been great in preseason, and he had a great college career, but he's not Tony Romo passing the ball. He doesn't understand defenses. He can't read defenses and make quick decisions. They are going to have to simplify the offense, and they are going to have to use Dak's running ability to keep defenses off balance if they're going to move the ball on a continual basis.
John, just I'm going to ask you to look into crystal ball a little bit with regards to Romo. He's been around a while. He's been hurt a lot. Do you believe this is his last season?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do. At least with Dallas. I think, here's the thing. Dak's been great, and with an off season under his belt after this year, he's only going to get better. And here's the thing. Dallas at some point has to make the decision that he just can't stay healthy anymore. And let's just not put our eggs into this basket anymore because he just can't stay on the field. He can't. So I think that now, here's the thing. He could come back, week 6, week 7, and he could have a good run. But what happens week 10, week 11? He's just, at this point in his career, he's just too fragile to count on to be there as a starting quarterback in the NFL.
John, elsewhere in the NFC East, we have the Washington Redskins, who I guess surprised a few folks last year, but they won the division, I think, more on the fact that it was a weak division. Kirk Cousins probably surprised to the upside just a little bit. We've got the Giants with a new head coach, Tom Coughlin, who coached them to 2 Super Bowl victories, is gone now. And the Eagles also have a new head coach. How do you see the remainder of the NFC East with the Redskins, the Giants, and the Eagles? What do you expect out of each one of those teams?
I think, looking at it right now, I think the division will come down to the Giants and the Redskins because they have the 2 quarterbacks. They have the 2 proven veteran in the NFL quarterback. So I think that the division race comes down to those 2 teams. The Eagles traded up last year in the draft to get a quarterback, but he's young, and they also gave up a lot of picks to get him, so that hurts the team this year. The Redskins and the Giants, you're looking at Eli Manning, who obviously is a proven quarterback. The Giants did a lot of things in the offseason to help their defense. The Redskins now have a second-year starting quarterback, and the Redskins aren't great anywhere, but they're good everywhere now. They're balanced. So it comes down to the Giants and the Redskins in that division.
And I actually have that Redskins 1, Giants 2, Eagles 3, Cowboys 4. That's the order of finish I have for the NFC East. Any thoughts specifically on the new coaches with the Giants or the Eagles?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the new head coach for the Giants was the offensive coordinator for the past couple of years. So it's not a new deal.
Continuity there.
Right. Whereas the Eagles, it's a different coach, it's a different style. So, there are going to be growing pains, and there are going to be a lot of them. They weren't very good, and then they traded up in the draft, which made them give away picks, which is how you build your team. So, the truth is that nobody knows what's going on with the Eagles, and we won't know till mid-season or later. But it's going to be a lot of growing pains for the Eagles, whereas the Giants had a continuity as far as the coaching changes.
John, NFC North, the Packers, I'm going to say they probably look to rebound just a little bit. I think Eddie Lacy got complacent, and therefore that led to his weight gain and his drop in production last year. It's well documented that he seems like he took that very seriously in the offseason, and he's looked pretty good in the preseason. It looks like Aaron Rodgers will have his full complement of receivers back. The Vikings just took a hard hit the other day with losing Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know if he's out for the season or not. Is he?
He's out for the year, yeah.
All right.
He may not be ready for next year.
Wow. The Lions, Calvin Johnson, being a fixture and the star of their offense for quite some time, has retired and gone. The Bears have second-year coach John Fox, who came over from the Denver Broncos, but they've let a lot of Brandon Marshall and Matt Forte are gone. Cutler seems like he's probably peaked as an NFL quarterback, and that peak was nothing to write home about, although he occasionally had gaudy statistics. I don't think anyone would consider him a real winner in the sense of the word when it came to winning games when it was on the line. How do you see? Because I see it Packers, Vikings, Lions, Bears, 1, 2, 3, 4 in this division. Throw in your thoughts with regards to what some of these teams may have that I haven't just mentioned, and how do you think they'll finish?
Okay, well, we'll start with the Vikings because they won the division last year. What happened to Bridgewater is it's a season changer. He was their starting quarterback. He was a quarterback going into third or fourth year starting. He was a guy who had showed a ton of promise, and then he goes out there and dislocates his knee, tears his ACL. It was basically a situation where it would be where to his toe touch his thigh. It was a terrible injury, and it's not even sure that he's going to be ready for next year. So he is definitely out for this year. And there's no way that they win that division with somebody they come up with at the very last hour, a week before the season starts. As far as the winner of the division, I see it going back to Green Bay. There were a ton of injuries in Green Bay last year. Eddie Lacy got out of shape. Aaron Rodgers' top two receivers were both hurt at certain times. They had O-line problems. They've been the most consistent team in the division for the last 6-7 years, and I think they will go back to that. Now, if Teddy Bridgewater had not been hurt, I think that the Vikings have a great chance of winning the division, but that's not the case. Bridgewater is gone, so Green Bay wins the division. As far as Chicago, it's a little bit of a mess. They're changing coaches. The quarterback's not playing well. They're losing their star players, Matt Forte, Brandon Marshall. They're not going to win that division anytime soon. As far as Detroit, they too are in flux. And it's whatever it is that they do this year, it's not going to be enough to overcome a healthy Green Bay team.
John, you know what I want to see with regards to Detroit? I want to see the middle of the year, that 90-year-old woman that owns them standing up and giving a news conference and firing somebody. That's all I want to see. I loved it last year when I remember at the time thinking, well, it makes sense, and she took the bull by the horns and made some move, and I wasn't it in like the middle of the season?
I think it was. I think it was right around the middle of the season. Yeah.
Gotta love a spunky granny like that.
Yeah. She has no idea what she's doing, but she wasn't liking what she was seeing, and you can't blame her. I'd rather an owner that will make changes, take risks.
I liked
rather
it.
Rather than
I liked it.
Rather than an owner that'll sit back and watch the team just flounder.
Yeah. With regards to real quick again, just back to the Vikings. This lays a lot on Adrian Peterson's shoulders. Is too much, isn't it, at this stage?
Here's the deal. They now, because of the timing of this, it's right around the time where a lot of quarterbacks are getting released. A lot of quarterbacks that have done good things in the NFL. One example, Michael Vick. Michael Vick is now available. And now, is Michael Vick a Super Bowl quarterback? Probably not. Probably not. He's not.
John, I wouldn't take Michael Vick on my work flag football team.
I understand. But when you're looking at, when you've gotten to the last week of the preseason when this happens, your choices are very, very limited. But there are a couple guys that could come in and make just enough passing plays to keep defenses honest as far as stopping Adrian Peterson. This will be a tough year for Adrian Peterson.
I agree.
It's all going to come down to, are they able to find a quarterback, whether it was on their current roster or somebody they pick up, that's able to complete enough passes downfield to get the safeties out of the box and allow Adrian Peterson to be who he is and make big plays to give the offense balance. So it's going to come to that. Whoever they decide is their quarterback is going to have to make plays, and that's just all there is to it. And if he doesn't make plays, this will be a long year, and it will be a bad year for Adrian Peterson. But if he can make just enough plays to back defenses off, then they still can be good, but they're not going to beat Green Bay for the division title.
John, moving out now to the NFC West, and I think this is one of the tougher divisions in the NFL as far as I'm concerned. You got the Seahawks and the Cardinals, who are good all-around teams. The Rams have an excellent defense, but other than Todd Gurley, they don't really have anything on offense. But the defense and Todd Gurley may be enough to possibly make them a wild card contender, maybe, possibly. And the 49ers, who they're in a tough division, I don't see that they have any really fine, exciting talent on the roster. And now Chip Kelly has taken his game from the Eagles out to the 49ers. Now, I was on record late last year as saying that Chip Kelly, his players weren't buying what he was selling. And to me, that's one of the biggest sins a coach can commit. I predicted that when he got fired, he wouldn't land a job, and then he does almost immediately land a job in San Francisco. Now, San Francisco's management/ownership has made a slew of horrible decisions over the past few years. So the fact that they hired Chip Kelly, even though he ran the Eagles into the ditch, totally off of the tracks and into the ditch, I just think it's just another bad decision. But I'll take your thoughts on the Chip Kelly situation in San Francisco and the division as a whole.
Okay, what's the most important position on a football team?
Well, I'm going to say quarterback.
The only reason why Chip Kelly was brought in, it was a last resort to try to fix Colin Kaepernick, trying to make Colin Kaepernick experience work out. I think that's the only reason he was brought in. Well, now we see that Kaepernick's running with second team or third team, if he's even playing. The only reason Chip Kelly got that job was to try to make the Kaepernick experiment work, because he has worked with, in college, athletic, mobile quarterback, and they hoped that they could make that work. Well, it's not going to work. They are a mess, and they will continue to be a mess. They have at least 2 or 3 years before they are real contenders in that division, because I think it's the toughest division in football. As far as Seattle, you know what you're getting. You're getting an amazing defense with amazing speed that can stop the run. They have great secondary. They get after the quarterback. You know what you're getting with them. I think what they're hoping on, their X factor, is Jimmy Graham. Are they able to get anywhere close to the production that the Saints got from Jimmy Graham? Are they able to get that in Seattle and turn him into a weapon in Seattle that defenses have to look after, that they have to commit 2 guys to? That's going to be the difference in Seattle. You know what you're getting in Seattle. The one thing you don't know what you're getting is with Jimmy Graham. Are they able to maximize his talents? That's going to be the question there. As far as the Rams, you've got young quarterbacks or unproven quarterbacks starting the season. They have not had great receivers. The bulk of the load will be on Todd Gurley, which he's great. But as great as a running back can be, it doesn't matter if the defense has 9 or 10 guys in the box. The Rams season will hinge upon whether or not whoever it is taking the snaps of quarterback can push the ball downfield and expand the defenses so that Todd Gurley can then be who he is, a dominant running back. I like the Cardinals in this division. I really, really do. They were great last year until Tyrann Mathieu went out. They added in the offseason Chandler Jones, who has 12 sacks a year. They drafted Robert Nkemdiche, who is a top 5 talent, and he slid to them because of off-field issues. So you add a 12-sack guy, you add a top 5 defensive talent, and you get Tyrann Mathieu back. The only thing that stops the Cardinals from winning this division this year is if Carson Palmer gets hurt again.
Do you think he stays? And I mean, it's really kind of impossible to tell. But yeah, I agree with you. If he stays healthy, they win this division. Defensively, they're strong. I think they're still hungry because they came up a little short last year. and he's got 3 great targets. Last year saw the reemergence of Larry Fitzgerald after it seemed like he was kind of on the twilight of his career. He comes back with a strong year playing in the slot last year. You've got Malcolm Floyd and John Brown. There's 3 great targets there for Carson Palmer to throw to.
Coach of the Cardinals is the best coach in the NFL as far as acquiring talent. He got John Brown in the 5th or 6th round. He got J.J. Nelson very, very late in the draft. He got David Johnson in the 3rd or 4th round, and he's projected by a lot of experts to be the number 1 back in fantasy this year. That coach has done an amazing job of using his draft picks, and then those draft picks becoming productive members of the team. So the only thing that holds them back this year is if Palmer stays upright, stays healthy, but they have also, for the past few years, been addressing the offensive line. So, like you said, it's impossible to say for sure, but I say he stays upright, and they're my favorite in that division.
Yeah, I'm going to go Seahawks, Cardinals, Rams, 49ers, and the only reason I'm going to go Seahawks is because I think they found something in the back third to half of last year, and man, they found a passing game that I don't know that the defenses are quite ready to stop. They changed horses in the middle of the stream last year. The Seahawks offense did, and I think they took a lot of people by surprise with the way Russell Wilson started slinging the ball all over the place. And also because I'd say he's less likely to get hurt than Carson Palmer. My sentimental favorite in this division would certainly be the Cardinals, but I'm going to go Seattle, Cardinals, Rams, 49ers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And, John, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will take a look at the AFC races. Okay, we are back from break now with our football analyst, John Springer Jr., and we'll now take a look at the AFC. Starting with the AFC South, we have the Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, Tennessee Titans, and Jacksonville Jaguars. How do you see this division playing out, John? My thoughts real quickly, the Texans came on strong last year. I really love some of the offseason moves they made. I think bringing Osweiler in to quarterback, and I love Lamar Miller coming in. I don't think the Dolphins ever used him the way he should have been used, so I think this is a big upgrade for them. They've got a great wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, and I think they have someone now that can deliver the ball, maybe not spectacularly, but at least adequately. The Colts had injury problems with Luck last year. Hopefully he'll be back healthy. The Titans and the Jags, Mariota got hurt last year, and hopefully he'll be back healthy. And, of course, they bring DeMarco Murray in to run. So how do you see this division playing out, and what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of each one of these teams?
Well, first off, about the division winner, I think this division could be the toughest to call because you could make an argument for 3 of the teams.
All of them except the Titans?
Right.
Okay.
Right. With the Texans, what the Texans have done is they've used a lot of top picks on a lot of great talent, but they just didn't have a quarterback. That it reminds me a little bit of the Lions 10 years ago, where they had a top 5 pick every year, but they never took a quarterback. And they had a ton of talent on the team because of the high draft pick. But then they got a quarterback, and then overnight, the team changed. It's the same thing with the Texans. They have J.J. Watt. They have Clowney. They have Hopkins. They drafted Will Fuller as the number 2 receiver or number 3 receiver, depending on how the competition works out. But they had a lot of really, really good players. And, of course, then they bring in Lamar Miller as the running back. And then you have Brock Osweiler at quarterback. So they made the 2 changes in the offseason that they really needed. They had a top-flight receiver. They needed a number 2. They went and got him. They had a good offense, but they went and got Osweiler, who's looked great in the preseason. I've been very, very impressed watching Osweiler. He seems very composed. And the old school guys in the NFL will say quarterbacks used to be drafted to sit 2 or 3 or 4 years before they were needed for action or pressed into action. And this is what's happened with Osweiler. He was a good quarterback out of college, but being drafted by a team that had Peyton Manning at quarterback, he was not needed. So he was allowed to sit and learn, sit and learn, sit and learn. And it's very, very obvious that he learned a lot when you watch him in the preseason this year. He has stood tall in the pocket. He's delivered great passes downfield accurately, and I've been really, really impressed. And then you have Lamar Miller, who comes in and gives the offense balance as far as run-pass. So it's tough to pick against them this year. If I do pick against them, I'd have to go Indy just because I think Luck is still the best quarterback in that division. They've attempted to address offensive line issues, defensive line issues, but I still don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough to... They have a better quarterback than the Texans, but I don't think they have an overall better team than the Texans.
I would agree with that.
When you have J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney on the line together, I saw it firsthand what they did, or what Jadeveon did by himself to the Saints in the preseason, and he was unblockable. Watt was not even playing.
John,
so when you think of
about Jadeveon Clowney, I was guilty of almost being ready to write him off as a bust because it was pretty well observed that he took a lot of plays off in his senior year of college. He seemed to be more about protecting himself than he did about getting out there and helping his team. And then he's been an absolute injury machine since he's been with the Texans. Do you think he lives up this year, this season, to the expectations and being that number 1 draft choice that he was 2 or 3 years ago?
Give you a little bit of background. I did watch him against the Saints, and then I watched him a week or 2 later. And then on the way to school, I was talking to John Gavin, and I said, Jadeveon, when he's on the field, still makes it look like he's an NFL guy against high school players. I said, you watch him and you think, okay, well, when he goes from the number 1 high school player into college, he's not going to be as good. And he is when he's on the field. And then when he's drafted number 1 overall, you think, well, he's not going to be as good against NFL talent. And then you see him, and then he's just toying with guys. He's a talent that is just different. It's a talent that comes around every 20 or 25 years. I'd say he's the closest thing to Reggie White since Reggie White. He's that good. And even though he's had a ton of injuries, even though he doesn't have the greatest work ethic, when he's on the field, he makes things look easy against first-team offenses in the NFL. It's scary how good he can be. Now, is he fully motivated? Is he 100% into it like a lot of other guys are? He may not be, but guess what? When you're as good as he is, he can still make it look easy either way.
Well, if you're a Texan fan, you may hope some of that constant running at 100% motor that J.J. Watt has rubs off a little bit on Jadeveon Clowney.
You would hope so, and you think so, and I mean, to be fair to Clowney, a lot of the things haven't been his fault. The injuries, microfracture at the bottom of the knee, those aren't his fault, and it's a terrible injury to try to come back from because the knee doesn't realize that it's hurt the so it doesn't repair. I mean, it's a tough injury to come back from. The problem is he's kind of shown the attitude, kind of a lackadaisical attitude. So when people don't see him on the field, then you see that attitude, then they just kind of assume the worst about him. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but
you're saying it may not necessarily be fair.
Right. Because when you see him on the field, he still makes it look easy.
Well, if those two are on their game and you've got 10 other guys out there on the field also, then that's going to be a fun defense to watch. That's for sure.
They definitely will. They will be tough. They got after Breeze. I mean, Clowney was in the backfield when the Saints played the Texans in the preseason. I mean, every snap, and he was beating guys with all different kinds of moves. And at a point, I just said, will y'all just take him out? Because, he's just he beat our left tackle. They would move him over to the left side. They would move him to the right side. And he's just making every one of our O-linemen look foolish, like they don't belong on the field. That's what he does when he's healthy. And if J.J. Watt comes back, you can't double-team them both.
No, you can't.
And defense starts with the line.
Yeah.
So if both of those guys are on the field, they are going to be a handful for anybody.
I do. I think the Texans are going to be fun to watch this year, and I'm not necessarily a fan of theirs, but I think they're going to be fun to watch.
I agree.
Do you think Mariota comes back? His game, his style of play at college at Oregon was the style that will get a guy hurt in the NFL, and he got hurt. What do you think this year? You think they're going to try to protect him a little more, or you think they're going to let him play his game?
Well, the Titans didn't have a good line, and I think they tried to address some of that in the off season. I'm a big fan of Mariota. I really, really like Mariota. He's the kind of guy who has a ton of talent and a ton of drive to be the best. But he did not go to the right system to come into the NFL and understand how to do things right off the bat. He wasn't coached by Jim Harbaugh. He wasn't coached by Cam Cameron. He wasn't coached by an offensive coach in college that ran an NFL-type system. So it's going to take some time for him to really come into his own as an NFL quarterback. But I think he eventually will do it. I just don't think it's this year.
And with the Jags, Bortles, something of a breakout year last year. Do you think he follows up?
I think the Jags are going to be really, really interesting. You see Bortles, you see Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns at receiver. They brought in Ivory from the Jets, who's a power running back. As far as defensively, they drafted Miles Jack, who was a top 5 talent. They drafted the DB Ramsey, who was thought of as the number 1 talent in the draft. They got him at number 5. They got Miles Jack in the second round. Their top 5 pick, Dante Fowler, from the year before, who missed the entire year. He's back. So they added 3 top 5 talent as far as draft-wise to their defense in one off season. So it's gonna come down to, does the defense take the next step? Because the offense took the next step last year. So it's going to come down this year to the defense and those young playmakers, those young stars. Are they ready to lead a playoff team?
So this division, I guess, and you mentioned earlier you thought 3 of the 4 will possibly compete, with the Titans being the team not among that. So you would see this as a division that would, in all likelihood, provide, or at least run a chance of providing one of the AFC wild cards.
Yes, I could see that, because you look at the Texans with what they've added. You look at Indy; they got Andrew Luck. They helped their line, all O-line and D-line. And then you look at Jacksonville, who really helps their defense, and they've got a really good young quarterback who's growing. So, yeah, I think that division, I think, will be the most hotly contested in the NFL this year. And I could easily see, a wild card coming from that division.
John, moving on to the AFC East, we've got the Patriots, the Jets, the Bills, the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a new head coach this year after firing their coach last year and then going part of the year with an interim coach, and now they've gone with someone else. We've got second-year coach at the Jets. Of course, Belichick is running things with the Patriots. Other than a 4-game suspension for Brady, which is going to finally be, I think we can go ahead and say, it's going to actually be served this year. I always said I'd believe it when I see it, but they've quit fighting it, so he's going to miss 4 games. Other than that, do you see a reason that the Patriots would not win this division? Are they still easily the best in the division, or are the Jets or Bills going to push them? I certainly don't think the Dolphins are.
Yeah, I don't see the Dolphins doing it. But there's just too many unanswered questions. And, when you're in the division with Tom Brady as a quarterback and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who does a great job, and then again, when you look at the Dolphins, what jumps out at you? Really nothing. There were times last year where the defense was good. That kind of jumped out at you every once in a while. As far as offensively, they've lost Lamar Miller. Ryan Tannehill has not taken the next step, and really nobody knows if he will or not. So I don't think the Dolphins, I'm pretty confident in that. I think the division comes down to the Patriots and the Jets. And here's the reason I think the Jets could pull it off is because of Brady's 4-game suspension. So I think by the end of the season, that record, as far as team against division, team against conference, I think the Jets could have the upper hand in that because of Brady missing the first 4 games. Ryan Fitzpatrick did a great job. I love the Jets coach, who was the defensive coordinator at the Cardinals for the past few years, and he's done a really good job at putting weapons around his quarterback and building a really good defense. So I think it will come down to the end. I think it will come down to the Jets and the Patriots. But if Tom Brady was not out for the first 4 games, I would clearly give it to the Patriots, even though that I think the Jets are a really good team. It's just hard. It's hard to bet against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick after all these years of them proving everybody wrong.
Well,
it's hard to bet against them.
Yeah, it certainly is. One thing about the Jets, they seem to be becoming the Chicago Bears East with the acquisition of Matt Forte and Brandon Marshall. Of course, Brandon Marshall was there last year, had a very, very, very productive year with Fitzpatrick as the quarterback. Do you feel like Forte is too far over the hill to be a real impact there, or do you think he's still got a season or 2 left in him, especially given the new surroundings and maybe a little bit of a fresher outlook and maybe a little more hopeful of actually accomplishing something? What do you see for Forte specifically as a contributor to the Jets' offense this year?
I do not think he's over the hill. I think it could have maybe helped him that he was injured in the second half of the season, that he maybe got some rest time. So I do not think he's over the hill. I think something you just said was, does it re-energize him to be on a contender? And I think it will. And the fact that he has Brandon Marshall running downfield, he has Eric Decker running downfield, he has a good quarterback, a reliable quarterback from week to week that you know what you're going to get. I think it re-energizes him, and I think he's going to have a good year. He's a really good receiver out of the backfield, and he's a great running back with taking carries out of the backfield. So I think that the Jets have the best, how would you say it, top 3 as far as, quarterback, running back, receiver. I'll take the Jets as far as Fitzpatrick, Forte, and Brandon Marshall as far as the triplets or the top three or however you want to look at it in that division. And if they win that division, it will be because of those three. But the Jets also have a really solid defense, and where we live, you don't see a lot of them. But the Jets have a very, very good defense and a very, very good defensive coach. So I could see the division going to the Jets this year. It's just hard to say that it will happen given the history of Belichick and Brady.
Yeah, I see it: Patriots, Jets, Bills, Dolphins in that order. But I'm about a 55 to 45% on that Patriots over the Jets. It wouldn't take a whole lot because of the 4-game suspension to start the year. It wouldn't take a whole lot to arm twisting to make me say Jets Patriots instead of Patriots Jets. John, moving on to the AFC North now, we've got the Steelers who won that division last year, the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Browns. The Browns have a new head coach, and Steelers, Bengals, Ravens, Browns is the way that I see them finishing. The Ravens, I don't know, I guess they just got old kind of suddenly, but they've gone in a span of about 3 or 4 years from winning the Super Bowl to being a non-factor. The Bengals, I think so much of, and I've mentioned this before, I think so much of football is mental. And there's the going into the playoffs last year. There's the, well, they've made the playoffs this many times, but it's been this long since they actually won a playoff game. And then at the end of that game against the Steelers last year, playoff game, they self-destruct. I mean, the Steelers, as much as I love the Steelers, and I'm a Steelers fan, the Steelers did not win that playoff game. The Bengals lost it. I think that is something that stays in a team's psyche.
I agree. Talk about that loss real quick. There was 1 or 2 hits late by Cincy defenders that were just awful plays that you know from a kid, from a child's age. You do not make hits like that because it's going to hurt your team.
Yeah.
And if they are selfish hits, they are hits that it's not going to do anything but injure somebody, and we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to get away from the injuring hits. But as far as the football game, it cost yards, big yards, that ended up causing Cincy the game. And Cincy, I see kind of similar to Dallas in that you just don't see the discipline, the structure, the organization that you want to see as far as a team that's going to make it to a Super Bowl. You just don't see it. And it showed up in that playoff game, and it showed up big.
It did show up big.
The game.
It did. And they managed to injure Antonio Brown to the point where he couldn't play against the Broncos, wasn't it, the next week?
Right. I saw that hit, and John Gavin and I were watching that hit, and I said immediately, that's a dirty hit, and that guy should get suspended for that, and that's an awful play. And, it did. Without that hit, the Bengals could have won that game. But with that hit, not only does it show a lack of discipline, but you lost the game because of it.
Yeah.
So that's something that is systemic within organizations. Marvin Lewis seems like that kind of guy where it's like, okay, we're going to let our guys be themselves and all of that. Well, it caught up with them on that last drive. They lost. Here's the bottom line: they lost their composure.
They did.
And it's like, act like you've been there before. Well, they hadn't been there before, so they didn't know how to act.
No.
They lost their composure. No. They made stupid plays, and it cost them the game. That's Cincy right now. So,
yeah.
Until they change that, and you're going to have to show me. I'm not going to believe it. You're going to have to show it. I'm going to have to see it before I believe it with them.
Yeah. Now you mentioned with the Jets, you felt like that they had in terms of the triplicate or the trifecta of receiver, running back, quarterback. You felt like that they had the best in that division. I'm fixing to name the best in the NFL: Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. There are no better three when you put the three together than those three. Antonio Brown is the most dominant, in my opinion, is the most dominant player at his position of any player in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball, possibly J.J. Watt on the defensive side of the ball. Nobody takes over a game like Antonio Brown, and the only limit that he has is Ben Roethlisberger staying healthy. With that said, Le'Veon Bell has had injury issues. He's facing a 3-game suspension starting the year. How do you see this division playing out? Do you think the Steelers are as strong as I think they are? And how do you see this division going 1, 2, 3, and 4?
I think that in the end, Pittsburgh wins the division. And I agree with what you're saying about having the best quarterback, running back, receiver combo in the league. And I think they have it by a little bit of distance. I think that the three of those guys, when they're on the field, it's just hard to stop them. You know, you do not see them punting a lot. I don't think anybody has an answer to those three players on the field at the same time. Le'Veon is going to have to stay out of trouble and stay on the field. Ben is going to have to stop holding on to the ball too long. A lot of the stuff from Ben, you know, people say, well, he's getting hurt, he's injury prone. He holds on to the ball forever to make a play, and it's part of what's made him great, but it is what has gotten him hurt.
I think Ben Roethlisberger thinks it's illegal to throw the ball before he's been hit once.
It's almost like he wants to make it harder on himself. So I'm going to wait for the defense to get to me, hit me. I'm going to spin off a guy. I'm going to take a hit, and then I'm going to throw the ball downfield. You know, it's what makes him great, and it's what hurts him. It's the yin and the yang. He's the perfect example of that. He's going to hold on the ball, but what that does, though, is it ends up with several, 40-plus yard plays during the season. But he takes hits, and his body wears down during the season. So he's going to have to find a happy medium there as far as keeping himself healthy, but also holding onto the ball and moving in the pocket until somebody comes open. So in that situation, it's the only person that can deal with that is Ben, because at this point there can be no more coaching of him where a coach tells him something he doesn't know. It's just going to come down to him, and is he making the right choices every down with the football?
Yeah.
But they definitely have the best players offensively in that division. Cleveland is a mess. They're rebuilding, and it will be a couple years until they're relevant again. As far as Baltimore, they remind me a lot of the 49ers from a couple years ago. You know, a few years back, the 49ers were this just amazingly dominant team that just had great players at every position. And it seemed like overnight they got old. The whole team got old.
Mm-hmm.
And guys decided they weren't going to play football anymore. And overnight that team changed. And it seems very, very similar to Baltimore in that regard, whereas overnight they got old. So
And I'm not a big fan of Ray Lewis, but you cannot deny the fact that he was the leader of that team, and with him gone last year, I think that showed something, along with some injuries and age. But defensively, they have gone from being among the best defenses in the NFL to they gave up yards and points by bucketfuls last year.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure, and you know it's not just Ray. I mean, you look at the veterans that have left there in the past 2, 3, 4 years. Haloti Ngata, the 350-pound nose guard or D tackle that went up to Detroit. Ray Lewis leaving, Ed Reed leaving. I mean, it's just huge player after huge player that either they came to a point where the salary that they demanded was not able to be matched or given to them by the organization because of the money that Baltimore gave to Joe Flacco. So it's a mixture of guys getting old and then guys demanding more money after finishing their contracts and doing really well, and Baltimore just not having the money to pay it anymore.
So do you see it Steelers, Browns, Ravens? Steelers, Bengals, Ravens, Browns?
For sure. It's going to come down to Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, and as of right now, I'd bet on Pittsburgh 1.
Due to the way that playoff game went last year, I think that the Cincinnati and Pittsburgh rivalry will take a notch up this year. I expect that to be a couple of hard-hitting personal games, the way that the Ravens and Steelers were of years past. That's what I expect to see out of these two games this year. I'd be surprised if there aren't fines and or suspensions after one or both of those games.
Oh, it's going to be nasty. It's going to be nasty between those two. It's going to be LSU, Alabama. It's going to be tough. But in the NFL, they are allowed to get away with a little bit more. Those games, if you're a football fan, those are games you're going to want to watch, both of them, for sure.
John, moving now to our last division race to take a look at, AFC West, Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders, Chargers. The Broncos, of course, the reigning Super Bowl champion. The Chiefs, after a really, really rough start last year, came on strong during the back part of the year. The Raiders seem to be slowly putting together some talent, and they've certainly got some offensive weapons with Derek Carr, the quarterback, Latavius Murray, the running back, and Amari Cooper, right?
Right.
Amari Cooper, the receiver. So they're putting together some weapons. The Chargers seem to have all kind of issues on defense. I believe they will get yards and score points by the ton. But I see this division going Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders, Chargers. I think the Broncos are just going to have some big-time quarterback issues. And although they didn't have stellar quarterback play last year, it was adequate, and I don't know that adequate's going to be what they get this year. But how do you see this division shaping up?
Okay, before I get into that, I'm going to hit on what you said about the Denver quarterback situation last year. No, they did not have great quarterback play, but there was a threat of great quarterback play because Peyton Manning was on the field. So even if he was not Peyton Manning, defenses still had to prepare for him like he was Peyton Manning. Defenses still had to give him respect. They had to give what he could do respect, even if you didn't see it but one or two times a game. Just the fact of Peyton Manning being out on that field made defenses play them differently, and you're going to lose that this year. There will be no fear of playmaking from the quarterback position in Denver this year like there was last year, even though Peyton was severely diminished in his ability to play quarterback last year. In the division race, I have KC winning the race. I think they're the most solid team with the least amount of holes. You have Andy Reid there, who is kind of quietly built a really good offense. You have Alex Smith, who's a former number one pick, who has become, one of the top 5 most efficient quarterbacks in the league. You have 2 or 3 backs that were developed because of Jamal Charles getting hurt last year, and now they've started to put together some targets at receiver, some weapons at receiver, Jeremy Maclin being the number 1 receiver. The KC defense is really, really tough. They're especially tough playing with a lead. So if that KC offense can even be in the top 10, that KC defense is going to be really, really tough to deal with. And I think KC is just the most complete team in that division. Denver, I think they're going to struggle. I think they're going to struggle because, like I said, even though Peyton wasn't Peyton last year, you still had to respect it. I think that this year defenses are just going to load the box, and they're going to dare the Denver quarterback, whoever it is, to beat them. And I think it will be tough for them to do so. They will make plays, but I don't think it will be enough plays to consistently win and to win the division. Oakland, I think, is my number 2 team in that division because they are building something, and they've got really good young playmakers on both sides of the ball. They remind me of a young Dallas team when they were building with Troy Aikman and Emmett, Michael Irvin, and then playmakers on defense, they have a lot of good young playmakers. And I trust them to consistently make plays more so than I do Denver and the Chargers. The Chargers have a great quarterback, but as far as I know, that's about all that they have. They do have Keenan Allen. He's a great weapon. Melvin Gordon, I think, will rebound this year and have a really good year. But as far as defensively, I'm not expecting much from him. And as far as the running game, I think Melvin Gordon will be a big impact in the receiving game. I'm not sure how good he will be in the running game. And the thing is, early in games, to keep the score close, you have to have a running game. And I'm not sure if they're going to have.
Let me tell you who to keep an eye on in addition to Keenan Allen. And Keenan Allen is going to draw some double teams, and he very well should based on what he was doing last year before he got hurt. But they added Travis Benjamin in the offseason, who had some big games with inconsistent, but he had some big games with Cleveland last year, and that was the only success that Johnny Manziel had was when he was hooking up with Travis Benjamin. If Travis Benjamin now playing with a team that has a quarterback that can deliver the ball consistently, I think he will have a big year. I think the Chargers put a lot of points on the board because of Phillip Rivers, and Rivers has multiple weapons, but I do agree that they will give up a lot of points, and I think that they probably finish last in what is top to bottom one of the strongest divisions in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right that they will put up points, and Benjamin in that offense should do very well in that offense. But when you have a receiver changing teams, and you just don't know how the chemistry is going to be between quarterback and receiver until you see it on the field. So the potential is there because Keenan Allen will draw double teams quite a bit, and then teams will have to focus on Melvin Gordon second. So Benjamin, if he comes in, if he's healthy, and if he's ready to go, could very well kind of be a missing part of that offense to where they become really, really hard to stop. Problem is their defense. So I think they'll definitely put up big, big numbers offensively. I really think they will. But I think part of that, though, will be because the defense allows a lot of points.
Well, John, I want to thank you again for joining us for an NFL preview. This has been really good. We have enjoyed doing it, and probably sometime along the middle of the season, I'm thinking that we're going to want to contact you again and do a middle season assessment and update.
Sure, yeah, that'd be good. Happy to be here.
Well, thanks again, and we are going to take a quick break, so we'll be right back. Everybody, thanks for hanging around for the last little segment here.
Yeah, again, that was our sports analyst, John Jr. Springer. Wait, John Springer Jr.? It says John Jr. Springer in my phone. So,
who, by the way, for those of you that don't know, one of the regular co-hosts of the show is John Springer Sr.
Yeah, that's you.
That's me. So
yeah,
that was my son.
Yeah, because in there, I think he was talking about John Gavin, who is your grandson.
Who's my grandson. Yeah, he did mention John Gavin a couple of times. So as we're coming up on a Labor Day weekend, I'm not exactly sure when this is going to be released. It may be during the Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
So assume that when you hear this, it will at least be released in the Labor Day weekend.
So I thought it would be cool to talk about Labor Day plans. So right now, as far as I know, we don't have anyone coming over. We're not going over to anyone's houses. I'm not cooking 400 pounds of barbecue. So I'm kicking back, relaxing, which is awesome because I've been busting it with like all these flood relief homes, and it's going to be so nice to just relax.
You've earned a 3-day break, certainly, because, 3 weeks now? For 3 weeks. You have been doing, in addition to working your 40-hour-a-week job and then some, you've been doing a lot of manual labor with going out and stripping out homes and moving furniture that got damaged in the recent floods
So
here
I'm going to enjoy my
in
break.
South Louisiana. You're going to enjoy your break. I, on the other hand...
Tell them about your craziness you've got planned.
I will get off work tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. Well, I'll get off work Friday night before Labor Day weekend at 10 o'clock. I will then drive 3.5 hours to Shreveport, Louisiana, where I will pick up my son and grandson. Then drive another 2 hours to Monroe, Louisiana, which will put us, by the time we probably grab something to eat at a Waffle House, get us somewhere around 4 a.m., hopefully safe and sound. Then we will take a nap and get up and go visit my mom in a nursing home there in Monroe, Louisiana. Spend some time with her. Then about 2 o'clock in the afternoon Saturday, we will have to go somewhere. And whether it'll be back to my sister's house or to a restaurant or something, we will have to go somewhere and watch the LSU-Wisconsin game.
We've been talking about this game for years.
Yes. We cannot do that in the nursing home.
Oh, no.
Because I love to enjoy...
people.
Yeah, we'd be scaring people.
Well, I've seen you at an LSU game, and it's not fun if they're not doing good.
It's intense.
Even when they, pass, you're like, well, that guy was open for 2 extra yards. Why didn't you throw to him instead?
So I can't...
A true fan.
Yeah. I've got a lot of driving this weekend. I'm
kind of
a family getting together and then watching the game and then a little more time with Mom after the game. I know she'll watch it on her own, but she just will watch it more calmly than me and my son and my grandson will.
Go Tigers.
And then I will drive them back to Shreveport on Sunday and drive back down here Sunday evening.
Jeez. At least you got Monday off.
I got Monday off.
You're going to rest up that day.
So
I'll be, so far, if doing anything, like we might go to the park and swim, but that's all relaxing,
Like I said, you've earned it. You have earned this break with working your job.
Now I say that, but I'm going to get home and Katie's going to already, go to Sam's Club and get, 300 pounds of hot dogs and invited everyone over, so you never know.
If you're going to have a cookout on Monday, you know how to find me.
Well, I'll just say, on Monday?
Yeah, I'll be back in town.
That's right, right.
So
it's highly likely the last 2 or 3 years we've had a bunch of people over. I know you've come over.
Yep.
So is Labor Day, that's, all right, Memorial Day is like the first day of summer or the summer.
The, quote, unofficial beginning of
and
summer.
Then is Labor Day the end?
The unofficial end of summer.
Okay.
It's always called the unofficial end of summer. There are 3 ends to summer, by the way. There is the astronomical end, which is the equinox. Yes, around September 21st, 22nd. That's the astronomical end. There's the unofficial end, which is Labor Day weekend, and then there is the meteorological end, which is August 31st. Because for the purposes of record keeping, the summer months are considered June, July, and August. The autumn months are considered September, October, and November. So for the purposes of record keeping with regards to weather, we have started autumn, although autumn officially begins with the equinox on, again, the 21st or 22nd. So I believe that's all I've got.
Yeah, this is a wrap on this episode. The Boomer and X Show at, almost said boomerandxshow@yahoo.com. That's our email. boomerandxshow.com. That's our website. Go check us out on YouTube. Subscribe. Give us a like on all them videos. iHeartRadio. We're on iHeartRadio again. They're all there, so you can listen to them that way. I'm not going to go through Twitter and Facebook. We're on every social media thing you're on, so go find us, like us at Boomer and X Show. And y'all, thank y'all for listening. We love doing this. We love y'all. Thank you for listening. John?
Everything he said, and happy Labor Day.